Good day, eh? And welcome to the channel. It's July 1st, 2022, and it's Canada Day. So in this shave, I've got three things that are Canadian. The first is this Manuka honey and oatmeal soap, made by a little company just outside of Toronto. Then I've got Boreal Splash by Tallow+Steel, and in that bowl, sweetening some tea, was maple syrup. I also have three things that are new, at least to me. The first is a Derby Extra Blade, which I first used yesterday. The next is Maca Root Aloe post-shave gel from the Body Shop, and the last was the chamomile that I added to my usual green tea. And now I've got three things that are old, or at least three things I haven't used in a while. One is the Varen soap by Stirling. The next is a safety razor from Wilkinson, and the last is an Omega boar brush. I haven't used any of these things in quite a while. So now I'm going to apply that Manuka honey and oatmeal soap as a pre-shave. I find this works actually pretty well. And now I've got my Omega brush, and I had that soaking in the green tea with chamomile. And I also use that green tea with chamomile to bloom my Stirling Varen soap. So the whole process of lathering this soap is basically reminding me why I decided not to use the Omega brush all that often, and why I've basically decided that I'm not going to use that ceramic dish anymore to hold a soap. It's just too inconvenient. Anyway, I didn't fully lather the soap in there because it was just getting to be a pain. So I took what I could out of the bowl. There is some in the brush, and I'm going to finish off on my face. Now, this took probably 4 or 5 minutes to get to this state where I'm actually happy with the lather. So I didn't want to make you sit through all that, so I cut it out. But I'm actually satisfied with the way this lather looks. So I should note for this Derby Extra Blade that this is its second use. Its first use was in the video I shot yesterday, which was a benchmark test. And about this razor, this is actually the first safety razor I ever used, and it nearly made me quit trying to use safety razors. It has positive blade exposure, unlike most of my other razors. I didn't know enough at the time, and for 2 straight weeks, maybe 3, trying to use this razor, every time I did, I ended up looking like I lost a fight with a pack of feral kittens. But now we're seeing if anything I've learned over the past couple months has actually made a difference to my technique. And the fact that I have not yet cut myself says that yes, I actually have learned. I'm being very careful here. In the way I'm holding the razor, I'm going to try a couple different ways of holding the razor during this shave, but I'm being very careful to apply no pressure whatsoever. And whereas most of my other razors have almost no blade feel or just a little, to me, this razor is 110% blade feel. So I am being very careful. But the way the shave's going so far has given me some confidence that I actually kind of know what I'm doing. But I am by no means an expert safety razor user. I'm also switching up the pattern that I'm using to shave. This is will probably look more like a standard 3-pass shave than any I've done to date on this channel. And I think, at least on this first pass, I'm actually enjoying the experience of using this razor. So when you see anyone, whether they're an expert or someone like me, when they say no pressure, they mean no pressure. The blade should only be touching the skin just enough to actually shear whiskers off your face. Now here I'm actually going back to the bowl, my rinse bowl, which has what was left of the green tea with chamomile and remnants of soap that have been rinsed off in that bowl. There's also whiskers mixed in, which may seem gross. But as I've continued to do this over the past several shaves, I've realized that bowl contains a lot of good stuff and a lot of slickness. And here I've been doing too many passes with no extra soap, so I completely forgot about lather. But anyway, I remembered it before I finished the whole pass. By the way, if you hear sounds that aren't talking, that could be my stomach making noises because I just had dinner a little while ago. So let me tell you a little bit about what Canada's like, at least for an American. It seems very similar on the surface. Same language. Seems like the same culture on the top. At least here in Toronto, people, especially if you're from the southern US, people may seem a little cold at first. They're not quite so openly friendly. Don't just start conversations with people, and might even be surprised if you just start talking to them for no reason. And they're also very apologetic. Like if you bump into them, they will say sorry to you. That doesn't necessarily mean they think they were at fault, but it's just a way of smoothing over the situation. And that's a very Canadian trait. I wouldn't say it's universal, but I mean, it is pretty much a stereotype that Canadians apologize for everything. Another thing that, if you're an American, that you should know about Canadians is that the Canadian culture, while very similar to the US, does have some differences, and you might be surprised by some of them. For instance, I think, now I've been here over 20 years, I think Canadians can be even more stubborn than Americans as individuals. But when it comes to social groups, they tend to be more cooperative in groups. And I think some of that stems from the basic original cultures that they descend from. America is all about freedom, liberty, pursuit of your own happiness. I mean, if there was a motto for the United States, it would be basically liberty. If there's a motto for Canada, it's peace and good government. That's very different. It's a very different. It affects everything. It affects the way the government operates. It affects the relationship between the people and the government. And while there are parts of Canada that are more like the US than others, I'd say on average, Canada is a bit more liberal, if you want to put it that way. There are some very conservative people here, though. They'd probably give some conservatives in the US a run for their money. But anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about the shave a bit more. You'll probably notice that this lather is looking pretty thin. It's been so long since I used this boar brush that I forgot how much better I find a synthetic brush to be in generating lather, in holding lather. So I was initially a little surprised at how little lather was left here, because with my synthetic brush, it almost seems like the lather's endless. So this shave is just proving to me that given the choice, I'm going to stick with synthetic brushes. And I've also been surprised by the amount, or I should say, the lack of backbone in this brush compared to my synthetic brush. I think my synthetic brush actually has more. So the synthetic brush simultaneously has more backbone, but is also softer. You tack on top of that the fact that it generates lather way more easily and seems to be an endless fountain of lather when you need it. I don't know why I'd ever use this boar brush again. As nice as it seems, well, it's inexpensive. But it seemed pretty nice when I got it. Now, watching myself here, I'm remembering that by this third pass, I had really only gotten 1 or 2 weepers. The difference between this use of this razor and the last time I used it is like night and day. Moving on from this razor when I did changed everything. After this, I went to a Merkur 15C, which is a very mild open comb. And you might think that an open comb should be aggressive, but aggressiveness really doesn't have too much to do with that. It has more to do with blade exposure and blade gap. Possibly even more dependent on exposure. The 15C has negative blade exposure. So the tip of the blade sits behind the shave plane. With this razor from Wilkinson, which is basically a rebadged Weishi, the tip of the blade actually sits outside of the shave plane. So it's got positive blade exposure. And up to this point, I wasn't sure if I could handle this. With the exception of my adjustable razors when set at their highest settings, This is the most aggressive razor I own. And I'm super surprised that this shave has gone as well as it has. So with my Gillette Super Adjustable, I had only, at this point, gone up to level 3, which I think was pretty neutral. I'm feeling a lot better about trying out level 4 on that razor. Okay, so that was my rinse bowl. There's whiskers in there. It looks gross, but like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I'm just going to use it to rinse my face. But in feeling my face there, it feels pretty smooth. Really smooth. So this shave is essentially done. All I need to do now is my post-shave routine, which always starts off with an Omega alum stick. Now you see me wincing there a little bit. It's because this definitely feels that's more than tingling all over the place, and a couple spots there are actual stings, but not too bad. So overall, I'd say this was a pretty satisfying shave. I feel pretty clean. There are no major nicks or cuts. And I feel like I'm not going to have any major irritation after the end of this. I will say though, while I liked this razor well enough on the first pass, I don't think I'd want to use it again on a second or third pass. Which is why I think I may just retire this razor or save it for just those situations where I really need this level of aggressiveness. Instead of reaching for this, I'll probably just reach for my Gillette Super Adjustable, because it can do everything this razor just did and also be very, very mild. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you've probably seen me do this with my synthetic brush. And this is where it came from. I always felt like this brush never dried out quickly enough. And I figured that one reason would be that the bristles were all stuck together. So that just spreads the bristles out and lets it dry faster. It's probably not necessary for the synthetic, but I guess I just developed this as a habit. And this final clean water rinse and cold water, because I generally rinse with cold water, actually feels really good, and my face feels super smooth. Now I'm going to use this Boreal splash from Tallow+Steel. I believe Tallow+Steel is based in Manitoba. And I love the scent of this splash after it's been exposed to air for a minute or two. It basically is the scent of the forest. And it feels good. And it has a lot of good stuff in it for your skin. And at this point, I decided the splash was not drying on my skin fast enough, so I decided to bring the hat back into the picture. At this point, I was getting pretty worried about the length of the video, to be honest. I don't know if you can tell, but this video process did not go extremely well today. But now I'm going to put on this Maca Root Aloe water gel, which is basically an aloe-based gel. It doesn't have much of a scent on its own. But it kind of smells like you're somewhere near an ocean. And what I notice is that after I put this gel on with that boreal splash, it made me think that I was in a forest next to the ocean, which all of a sudden is like, I wonder if this is what BC smells like, or British Columbia. I haven't been there. I haven't been to any other Canadian provinces. I've only been in Ontario, which is a shame, and I should rectify that at some point. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button, share it with someone, and maybe even subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I'd appreciate it. And now, the 4 rules handed down to us by the Lords of Shaving. 1 blade, no pressure, quality lather, deft hand. This is the way. Bye-bye.